Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast series for September Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. We're interviewing families who have gone through childhood cancer. Our guest today is Amy Quarles, mother of Avery. So, to start, could you tell us about Avery?
Sure. Thank you for having me here today, first of all. And um, Avery now is an almost 7-year-old who is about to enter into first grade. And our journey with rhabdomyosarcoma started all the way back at around 7 months of age.
So, could you tell us kind of about his personality and what makes him special?
Oh, sure. Everything makes him special because he's mine and he's perfect. But what really makes him special today, I think, is his ability to overcome. He didn't get a choice in the matter, but everything that he's been through has taught him a lot about perseverance, resiliency, and it shines today in all the things that he decides to participate in. And I think just how much other people who don't know his story and don't know his journey have said, oh my gosh, I would never know. And so I think that speaks volumes to what he's had to overcome to just show the world that it looks like he hasn't been through anything.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing considering how young he is. I think
Yes,
that's really mature.
yes, I would agree.
So, what was the cancer journey like?
Um, well, I think now my lens, excuse me, is so much wider. And what I have learned is that the cancer journey really ebbs and flows over time. The initial diagnosis phase is far different than the phase that we're in now. And there are a lot of unknowns throughout the way. Everybody's journey ends up with a lot of unknowns that they have to overcome that was not on the original plan. So um, I would say that Avery's diagnosis started, unfortunately, like a lot of other families, with misdiagnosis. He was originally diagnosed with a dermoid cyst and went through a full craniotomy at the age of 10 months. Pretty significant surgery for anyone, let alone a 10-month-old. And it was upon the biopsy results that we found out that he was diagnosed with embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma, location localized in what they consider nasopharyngeal. And that was, like most people will say, right? D-Day, the worst day. Um, and then you are thrown into the world like everybody else is, and you quickly have to start treatment. You're all of a sudden inpatient, you're at a hospital, everything is thrown upside down. Avery's situation was unique because he was so little, not the littlest by any means, but little by definition. And that caused us to have an external Broviac line instead of an internal port. And that had a whole set of challenges that came along with it. So even when we weren't hospitalized for treatment, we were often hospitalized from complications that occurred with that line. And so that's what I mean by like those unknowns, the things that pop up that aren't even treatment related. And then as you understand, that I think some people might not understand, is how intensive the the initial protocol for treating rhabdomyosarcoma is. I was shocked to learn that, we would essentially be in a 42-week treatment cycle, pretty much taking over our entire lives, for that year. So, um, having other children, that brings its complications in, of course, as well, and having to navigate childcare and one parent being at home and one parent being at the hospital. Um, Taking care of a baby that age is hard enough in and of itself, and then to try to do it inside of a hospital where there's lots of bottles and changings and um, busy a busy body that wants to get around, um, And that was very challenging for us, was to keep him happy and occupied and to give him as much normalcy as humanly possible in that setting. Um, and then I would say, after that treatment had ended, we rang the bell and we came home and tried to get back at life, so to speak. Um, and feel free to interrupt me if you want me to break this up.
That's
If
all
this
good.
story is going too long. Okay. And so I would say probably tried to get back at it for about 3 months. And then I had gotten Avery up from a nap. And I was sitting at the bottom of our stairs and he was snuggling me like most post nap 2-year-olds do. And he looked at me in my face, and I sort of saw this, what I would call a blue hue of a straight line on his nose and a little bit of a bump. And I can't imagine he napped for any longer than 2 hours. So, just again, a perspective of how cruel and vicious and strong and radical rhabdomyosarcoma can be. So, I knew right away. How did I know right away that he had relapsed? Most would probably say because I'm his mom, but also, what else could it be? Unfortunately, um, once I contacted his oncology team and they started doing the tests that you would test to see if a kid relapsed, everything kept coming back negative, which is problematic in of itself for later on. But we finally were able to get another biopsy. And when we did, it came back that it was a relapse. So, of course, what this means for the cancer journey world is that we have to have a new protocol, right? We can't go back to the old way of doing it. And then now we have to be a little more aggressive, which is a really hard pill to swallow when you feel like it was already aggressive enough. Um, it gives this feeling of all for naught, 42 weeks of intensive treatment and
Yeah.
essentially signing a kid up for poisonous treatments that are going to forever pain his body later on, and then to do it again. And again, this is very common in the rhabdo world. I understand this now, didn't understand it at the time. This time, more intensive protocol. And, we're getting our port put back in, all of those things. And then on top of it, now what we did this time was radiation. We were told that Avery was too young for radiation the first go around, just primarily due to the size of his body and his facial features. This time around, we didn't have an option, so to speak. So that was different to our journey this time. And I can honestly say, um, for me personally, radiation was more difficult than chemotherapy. Saying it as the person who wasn't going through it, right? People who've experienced chemotherapy might have a completely different perspective. But as a parent watching and then now knowing the side effects of the radiation to present date, that's the big doozy of a treatment. Um, on the other hand, I also can say I believe that it is what gives our rhabdo kids a fighting chance in a lot of situations and can contribute to the success of more time or a longer life. So I am thankful that that therapy exists. I'm thankful that that science exists. I'm just saddened of what it does, the aftermath of what it does.
Yeah.
Um, but after that, we finished our second go of treatment, all of our radiation, and then we took things a little bit slower this time, right? We're a little slower to ring the bell. We're a little slower to get that port removed. We want a few really good scans behind us. And therefore, goes back to the complication of Avery's relapse not showing up on scans. So now I have his oncologist who is rightfully concerned at how we're going to keep up with surveillance and make sure that Avery really is truly cancer free. And so that's why we slowed things down. In the rhabdomyosarcoma world, maintenance chemotherapy is a hot topic. That science is out there, but it is newer from the science side of things. So there are some hospitals that have strong opinions, and there's other hospitals that allow families to make that decision. And I was very grateful that our treating hospital allowed us to make that decision. But also a really hard decision to make as a non-oncologist parent.
Yeah.
So we chose to do maintenance therapy. We chose to do maintenance chemo. It just felt that after all of that, we had to give it everything we had. So we completed 6 months of maintenance chemo, and then that was it. We eventually rang the bell and started doing what I call cleanup crew. So we're still in the cleanup phase of things, right? So Avery post radiation has had a lot of complications with his vision and his sinuses. He just most recently had cataract surgery to remove cataract in his right eye. He has orthotics for chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy, which is very common, especially after having vincristine, which is a common chemo treatment for rhabdo. And yeah, so there's also a lot of social emotional things that go into this, the whole family, and more specifically Avery. The educational component of getting him an IEP and making sure that he's successful as he starts his new school journeys. And that's something that I guess this journey uh, can't really prepare you for, right? On day one. Day one is, like I said, D Day, and it is the worst day of finding out. But then you realize, well, you can't realize at the time, but you realize looking backward, wow, there was so much that was to come that I had no idea was to come. And that's something that can be really daunting to know when you're meeting new families that have been recently diagnosed. So helping them understand that we kind of just have to deal with what we have right now, but then also helping them understand that there are some things that you can do now that we've learned that you don't have to go through because other people have figured it out for you, to try to decrease as much pain and damage as this journey can cause.
Do you think you would do anything differently if,
Mm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but such a fantastic question that I really love to answer because I know that myself and other parents who have gone through this share the feeling that a lot of the external supports in this community are committed to making you feel like you've done nothing wrong. And who wouldn't, right? Because they love
Yeah.
us and they care about us. And from a scientific perspective, did I do anything wrong? Well, I don't know. My oncologist says absolutely not. We don't have, but then again, I'm like, well, we don't have the research and the data to know if I did do something wrong, or if the environment that I'm in did something wrong, or, we don't know that yet. Until we know the cause, we're not sure. I didn't intentionally do anything wrong, of course not. I made every decision on his treatment along the way, given the information that I had at the time. What would I do differently? I would have gotten a second opinion immediately upon that initial diagnosis. It doesn't feel like you can get a second diagnosis. You go from well visits at your pediatrician's office to being in a large pediatric hospital and people who know so much more than you and that you just have an immediate respect for, right? Because these are extremely intelligent doctors. that are telling you things that you don't know anything about. So your brain goes into, oh my God, okay, what do we need to do? And I wish I would have slowed down, and I wish I would have gotten a second opinion. Would I have gotten different results? I don't know. But that is one thing that I wish I would have done so that we didn't operate before knowing that it was cancer. Um, I would have gotten a second opinion about radiation the first time around as well to potentially prevent that relapse. I've heard now that there were ways that maybe we could have done some targeted proton therapy, even though he was younger. And hmm, that's from a treatment perspective, that's what I would have done differently. I can say that, you know, from a community perspective, I was really afraid to join the cancer world. I didn't want to meet other cancer families. I didn't want that. I wanted to get it done and I wanted to get out, so to speak. Now that I know how incredible the community is, I wish I would have joined in a lot sooner. I wish I would have leaned on more supports. I wish I would have listened to my social worker when she said, apply for this and apply for this. I always thought, like, oh, well, that's for somebody else who's more in need. No, we were in need and we needed that. And we needed to take advantage of all the resources that we had at the time. So that's something that I would have done differently as well.
So, can you tell us about Avery's Rhabdo Blast project?
Yeah. So um, I couldn't love CCTDI anymore if I tried. But that'll come out later in part of the story because I didn't know anything about CCTDI until I was sitting in a hospital room, just me and Avery. And it was the morning. We were kind of doing our wake up routine. And I had this overwhelming feeling that upon this relapse, I was so out of control from a science standpoint. I can sit here, I can do the protocols, I can adhere to all the advice from his doctors, but was it enough? You feel as a parent responsible for not only everything when it comes to your children, but also like clearly keeping them alive, right? This is the fundamental job that I have. So if your only job is to keep your children alive, you'll do anything, you know. We know that already as humans, but I felt this deep threat and this deep panic that I wasn't doing enough. And it wasn't anything that anybody could soothe or talk me out of. So I just started doing what any other sane human does and started Googling to death. I just Googled and Googled and Googled more until I was like, who can save my kid, you know, that's on the internet? Um, and I came across CCTDI and I came across Dr. Charles Keller and all of the research that they were doing. And it felt at the time like they were the only people on planet Earth that cared about rhabdomyosarcoma. And that's a big deal when you have a kiddo with a quote unquote rare, because we don't like to say that pediatric cancer is rare, but a quote unquote rarer pediatric cancer. And I was like, well, who am I? Right? Just a mom with a kid. And I called, and at the time, um, I was able to reach somebody directly, right? I have this wonderful woman who answers the phone on the other line who is so sweet and so kind and so welcoming. And she's like, well, why don't you talk to Charles? You know, and I'm like, Charles, you mean Dr. Keller? You know, like we're on a first name basis off the bat, and this is like a scientific research facility. It feels to most people, I think, that research is far and beyond, right? It's like in a different room, in a different place, in a different
Yeah.
state that's untouchable. And we don't know anything about it. We might give our funds to it, but we don't really know what goes on. And it's not for us to know what goes on because those people are smarter and we don't know what's happening. We just hope they're doing the right things. So I that was dissipated immediately. Immediately, I got Charles with his laptop up, giving me a tour of the facility, showing me. And it was within a few days that he was talking to me and talking to me like I was like a real person, not some pariah, like he was so genuine. And that was my first fall in love moment with CCTDI. And then he came back to me and he was like, "What are you passionate about?" And well, of course, and I'm passionate about all of it, but I had to really hone into what specifically about Avery's case was I the most passionate about under the scope of what you guys are doing. So I was like, well, one thing is that the relapse was, you know, horrific. It took us out, so to speak, for months. So I wanted to know why. I wanted to know why a proven frontline protocol was ineffective in keeping his cancer away. I wanted to know why Rhabdo is so vicious that it loves to relapse. We are immersed now in the Rhabdo world, and I see families that have been off treatment, cancer free for longer than that deep breath 5 years, and it's still coming back. And that is devastating to feel like you can never, ever relax, ever take a deep breath. And so my passion is what Rhabdo loves to relapse and why. And how do we prevent that? It's one thing to get a cancer diagnosis, knock it out the park, and then deal with that aftermath. It's another whole thing to just have it looming in the background and consistently coming back and coming back and coming back. So I explained this to him. Of course, I have no scientific terminology to state what I'm stating. And so Dr. Keller really helped me to develop what he knows as Avery's rhabdoblast project to come up with why are these cells so good at communicating with each other? Why are rhabdo cells so good at communicating with healthy cells, more specifically? Um, and as far as the science piece of it goes, I know a little bit more, but I'll muck it all up. So, that's where I just said, okay, the full transparency is here. I feel good at going back and asking the people that I love and care about in my community to fund this cause. And it just started from there. It just started with fundraisers and getting the links out and, you know, spreading the word. And a lot of it has to just come down to figuring out how to say rhabdomyosarcoma first. I'm still spelling it for even other medical professionals that have never heard of it. The awareness piece has been huge. I'm happy to say that there are so many people that really care about Avery that can say rhabdomyosarcoma and can share it with other people. And um, that has been one of the most joyous parts of all of this is the community. But the more important part that I understand and that you understand is how much money this takes. You can raise $1 million and be incredibly successful in an event, and that might be just enough to get one round of experimental drugs through, or one, or fixing something in a lab to create another test. This. I've learned this along the way. So yes, we've raised, to present date, I think we're at almost 57,000, which is huge and amazing and wonderful. But our Avery's Rhabdoblast project aimed to raise 160,000. So we have some more work to do. Um, and everybody has lives, right? So things come and go, and we're ready to get back into it. September's coming up. That's our big month to do some things and to continue to raise money. So I'm forever grateful. It feels amazing that it went from me sitting on a makeshift hospital bed couch situation to speaking to you today about it. That part is really cool for me, and I feel honored. I've always felt honored to be on this journey with Avery.
I think that's really great. So what do you think is next for you and Avery?
Um, Sorry, that got me. um, Really beautiful question. The reason why I'm so emotional over that question is simply because I get to answer it. It is not lost on me or anybody else that has had to experience cancer in any capacity. The literal luck of the draw that this is. I don't know why Avery had the type of cancer that he had and didn't have another type, or why some kiddos have don't relapse and others do, and why our older kiddos with alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma have such a harder time. And I don't mean from a scientific perspective, I just mean what those families are up against. I know plenty of amazing human beings, some close friends of mine that have lost their children to cancer and to rhabdomyosarcoma, kids that we've shared treatment rooms with. So to know that there's a next, especially after relapse when I didn't think there was going to be a next, is really all I need. But what is next for us in terms of honoring those babies that are no longer here is to live our lives. And I think Avery does an incredible job at that. We made a conscious decision this summer to do it all, do it all, from swimming to zoos to museums to parks. Those are always for me what's next. Um, Registering for first grade, like what a gift, what an honor. Um, advocating, advocating for him is a huge next step for me. It has been on this entire journey. I feel very blessed to have an advocacy skill set from my career as a special education teacher and helping other families advocate along the way. So I've learned how to become a strong advocate for Avery in his medical journey. That's very important to me. It's something that I don't take lightly, and that I continue to show up as his advocate in everything that we do. Um, Next steps for him, I think, too, is that he is getting more cognitively aware of what he went through and how he wants to show up in terms of advocacy. And that's pretty cool because he has first grader language. and it's very different than my language. And it can be really to the point and unexpected and unprompted, and it keeps us all on our toes. But he is very good about speaking about his cancer and having rhabdomyosarcoma and what he went through, as his brother Evan, who's only a year older than him. They both have quite the dynamic duo of the Fearless Cancer team. And I think also next steps for this project are sort of, I think we needed a refresh. There was a lot of personal things that had happened in our life that kept us from kind of championing this in the last year or two. And I think we gotta get back into it. We need to revitalize, refresh, and get our community back together and start fundraising at a deeper level. And yeah, so those are kind of my next steps. I feel very honored that I can help any other families too when I have people reach out to me and say, hey, I have a new Rhabdo family, whether it be via our social worker at our hospital or just another cancer mom. I feel so honored to be able to do that. So I want to continue to help in any way I can in that realm as well.
Yeah, I think that's really great. Is there anything you would like to share before we end?
I think the last thing that I want to share, when we had spoken about sort of those different stages that you go through throughout this journey. The stage that I am in now is one that really helps everyone that cares to listen understand that pediatric cancer is not bald headed kids on cute commercials. That once the treatment is over and their hair grows back, in my opinion, the real journey begins. And even though to the rest of the world, he looks amazing and he looks like nothing may have ever happened to him, I know the damage that has been done to his body. And I know the statistics that all of our kids, even outside of rhabdomyosarcoma, face, any pediatric cancer child faces. I believe the last one I looked at was 95% of pediatric cancer survivors will have a life-threatening event before the age of 45. We know what these treatments have done to our kids. And both things are true. I'm forever grateful and I'm forever heartbroken. I want people to know that pediatric cancer is forever.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And I know that's a really heavy statement, but the intent behind it is to have the impact that that is changed, that we fund research accordingly so that obviously a cure is the goal. The steps to obtain that are likely to look like less harmful treatments. And that would ensure that not only will our children have a greater success in surviving, but that their survival includes flourishing in their futures. Thank you.